Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, June 10th at 8 a.m. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great, thank you. All right. Moving on to item number 3. Obviously we're talking about today's last day of school. So you'll start seeing more kids running around town. Also just want to congratulate the school district for a fantastic year. I think graduation is this Thursday, so it'll be a little crazy down there. This also typically means we start having staffing at all our beaches starting this weekend because we get our summer kids back. So we will have gate guards and everybody fully staffed by this weekend. So 7 days a week starting this weekend onwards through Labor Day. We will be having, you are required to have a parking pass sticker if you're going to be parking in any of our beaches. And not really much more to update today. Any other Board of Selectmen comments or liaison reports? No?
Not for me.
Okay, great. Moving on to citizens' comments. Do we have a hand
Yes,
raised?
there's one. Hold on.
Okay.
Go ahead, Fran.
Thanks. Good morning. I'm Francis Brady. I live at 108 Genesee Lane in Madison. I'm here to express my objection to agenda item number 10, the installation of artificial turf at the Green Hill campus. I'm a retired chemist from a Fortune 500 company where I worked for 40 years with petrochemicals. I'm also the proud father of a doctor of pediatric emergency medicine. I recently audited a college course on plastics and health, where I attended a lecture by a health expert from the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai on the hazards of artificial turf in children's health. Yesterday, I sent that presentation to the Board of Selectmen and the school superintendent. It highlights several issues that have been scientifically found to be associated with artificial turf, including exposure to PFAS chemicals from the plastic grass, exposure to heavy metals such as lead and cadmium, and other toxic tire chemicals from the rubber infill, watershed contamination by these chemicals and microplastics from the plastic grass, heat exhaustion due to higher surface temperatures, such as much as 40 to 60 degrees higher than natural grass, leg injuries from less forgiving surface, and this might be important to you guys, the financial burden of having to replace artificial playing surfaces every 8 to 10 years. And finally, the added environmental and financial costs of disposing almost 2 acres of plastic turf and the equivalent of 20,000 old tires worth of rubber infill every 8 years. All this so we can avoid a few rain cancellations. Unfortunately, I expect that your decision is a fait accompli, so I will end with a plea to you to at least consider putting in place a safety protocol and educate the children and parents on these risks, as it's done now at the town of Westport, Connecticut. If you're concerned and want more to learn more about this, I can arrange for Sarah Evans, PhD, Master of Public Health, Assistant Professor at the Department of Children's Environmental Health at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, to give a formal presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your comment. Any other hands raised, Jeannie?
No, there are not.
Okay, great. All right, moving on to item number 6. I'm actually going to amend this consent agenda motion. So I'd like to go a motion to an amended consent agenda to approve the minutes from May 27, 2025, but with a correction to reflect a term for David Leventhal's appointment to the Shellfish Commission that to expire on January 1st, 2027, not January 1st, 2029.
So moved.
Yeah.
Okay, just that minor correction that we caught needed to be adjusted.
Good.
Okay. And any further comments, questions? That's it for the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, well, tonight, want to just welcome, we have our Madison 200 America 250 committee, which we set up the end of last year. The chair of that committee is Roz Kama, and I think some of her other board members are on there. Roz, so I don't know, do you want everybody to come up who's on the committee with you?
Absolutely, sure.
Okay,
Welcome.
great. So Jeannie, if you could do that. And then I know she had sent around a presentation,
Mhm.
but we'll let you share that. And if with that, I just want to, we're excited to see this move forward, you know.
We're so excited. Yeah.
It's just a reminder for the public. It's our 200th next year, in 2026. So we're planning a year of different ways to celebrate Madison's history. So with that, I will turn it over to Roz.
Thank you, Peggy, and thank you to the Board of Selectmen. I was appointed to this position, not really clear where we were going to go with this, but I was appointed a phenomenal committee. We had a bit of a slow start in January, but as of last meeting, we have our full complement, and so no pun intended, we're tipping our toe into the water. And Jeannie, are you driving this bus or am I? Do I just tell you to advance the slides or can I do that?
You're telling me to advance.
All right, go ahead, advance. So this is a brief presentation to tell you about the groundwork. We were given a charge by the Board of Selectmen. In 2026, Madison, Connecticut celebrates its 200th anniversary as an independent town and joins the nation in marking the 250th anniversary of American independence. Our town's history is deeply interwoven with the nation's founding ideals and spirit of community that shape both local and national progress. This bicentennial celebration honors Madison's journey from its earliest days through its official incorporation in 1826, reflecting on community's contributions to the nation's story and its ongoing role in shaping our collective future. The festival, as we're calling it, is co-branded to highlight both the town's and the country's milestones, inviting all, and I'll just underscore all, to reflect on the legacy of independence and the importance of unity. So that's our official charge. If you would go to the next slide, Jeannie, please. We haven't taken a formal picture, so I thank the Women's Club for having a good photo, but that's our placeholder. As I mentioned, I was publicly appointed by the Board of Selectmen, as were the rest of the committee members. In our first meeting, we elected officers. So Ryan Duquesne, who is also public representative, is serving as our treasurer. I have a typo here, and my apologies. Dawn Jackson, not Richardson, who is the director of the Chamber of Commerce, has agreed to serve as our co-chair. Laura Downs from the Scranton Memorial Library as our secretary. We are honored to have Henry Griggs, our illustrious town historian, who just brings so much good knowledge, coupled with Thomas Lee from Deacon John Graves, Carol Stoltz and Mary Ann Harmuth, who share the one vote from the Madison Historical Society, and Matt Bloom from Economic Development. And then our non-voting appointees, our Board of Selectmen, Al Goldberg has been assigned to us, with Bob Donahue from Board of Finance and Mary Ann Connolly from Board of Education. Our meetings are open to the public. Few attend, but please feel free to come, and we will start sharing publicly this work. But let's move on, and I'll tell you a little bit about what we've been up to. So next slide, Jeannie, please. So one of the things we did as each and every board member or committee member came on was to ask them why. Why do you live in Madison? Why did you choose to live here? Why did you choose to stay here? And there was no question. The overarching theme were the wonderful connections made here, both through people and resources and our wonderful environment. And so we are building our slogan on connecting from before to beyond Madison, Connecticut, 1826 to 2026, with a nod back to 1641 when we were once known as East Guilford. There will clearly be lots of opportunities to share a fun logo that is developing both in swag and in sponsorship opportunities to share this over the course of the year. Next slide, please. So we are trying to be realistic about that which we can accomplish as a committee. We have one very reverent singular event that we will host on the actual birthday, the date of signing of our corporation papers. And we will do that probably, or in a historical way around Lee Academy. We have many thoughts, and there's not enough time here to go into it today. We are looking to create a fun festival, a birthday party of sorts, bookending our 4th of July, our wonderful 4th of July festivities the weekend prior. It happens to be exactly 1 year from now. That weekend will actually be the rising of the strawberry moon, which is happening tonight. But it will fall on a weekend, and so we're using the theme of the rising strawberry moon. Fun ideas are percolating, one of which is we might do a strawberry cake bake-off involving our local farms and restaurants and things of that sort. But we will make sure that whatever it is we do includes all. The state of Connecticut is really organizing all of the towns in the state of Connecticut. One of the things they're asking us to do on July 4th at 2 p.m. is to ring bells. We will organize it in a way, and we hope in a fun way. One thought is to have the Daniel Hand High School Clay Club create commemorative bells with our logo and sell them as a fundraiser. And we've been talking to the Mercy Center, the Wharf, and John Michael Parker maybe at Hammond Acid to create a human chain along our shore at 2 p.m. to ring our bells and sing happy birthday to the town with a drone flying over. Logistics to come, and we certainly hope folks will help volunteer and certainly participate. Next slide. So that's the ambition of our committee, but to let this sort of last all year long, we're engaging each and every one of our town's nonprofits. We'd like to engage for-profits and our thought leaders in town as well. We've just begun with the nonprofits, asking them to co-brand an event that they're already having within the course of the year, maybe put a twist on it. So we have engagement right now, for instance. So Fran Brady was just on Mad for Trees. We're thinking about leaving a legacy, something permanent that we can install. One of the ideas is to plant live trees that would survive for another 200 years. So 200 years from now, our community could look back on the work that we're doing. Other discussions that have been engaged, Deacon John Graves and Madison Historical Society have opened up all of their events for us, which is an important part of our charge. Chamber of Commerce, Shoreline Arts Alliance. We're looking at sponsorship possibly with Crayola Crayons, who now owns Silly Putty. For those of you who know the Silly Putty story in Madison, we're thinking of engaging school children from K through 12 in stretching stories. And so building creative, wonderful themes. The Garden Club of Madison and many others are so, no matter who we ask, they are delighted and engaged. And so this will be a really fun year. Next slide, please. So we're trying to build an armature around this. And so for each of these organizations, be it nonprofit, and we will get to the for-profit community, and we have many wonderful subject matter experts in this town, we'd like to create an opportunity for all to engage within these 4 pillars: our history, looking back and understanding how we got to today; our legacy, what are we doing today to build a wonderful future for our next generations; community, engaging all; and ecology, recognizing that we're not just a town green or a beach. We have a lot of wonderful places to celebrate, and we will spread that celebration throughout our vast community as Madison. Next slide. So money. Right now, we are a group of very smart, creative people bringing our brain trust. We have no finances, we have no funding. We are trying to put the armature in place to be able to raise money. We're going to seek sponsorship, both for our primary events and our co-branded events. And we will conduct a series of fundraising activities. So if asked, please be generous. We'll accept 200 pennies and $100 bills. We'll make it a fun way to participate. And we will get on with that. But we've written a case statement, and we will start with some major sponsors. So we'll have seed money to get this underway. Next. So community involvement. As soon as our work plan is in place and we have a way to engage those in less of an organizational way, but more as sort of doers, we will have opportunities to share what those are and allow you all to sign up. We will aggressively go after sponsorship. And we'd like to say that all ages, whether you have 2 legs or 4 legs, will find a way for you to be engaged. So please pay attention, and we hope you'll be involved. Next slide. So we're on our way. This is where we are. Our next steps are to develop an overall work plan and budget, assign chairs to each of these wonderful activities, seek sponsors, and as I said, enlist volunteers. And we hope you'll all participate. So next slide. So we're just open for questions or discussion, and certainly you're welcome to join us. Our meeting is publicly posted on the town's website, and we welcome the public to attend or to certainly reach out to me or any of our committee members. So that's where we are. We hope you're excited. Thank you.
Great, thank you. No, it's exciting to see this kind of formulate, you know. I know it's a process, and it sounds like you've gotten off to a great start. And it's like one of these fun things that we get to do, right? As
Absolutely.
as a town. So it's exciting to see it kind of develop. I know that you wanted to have a little conversation about budget, obviously, because there's a point in time that you're going to have to start making commitments on different things.
Correct.
I think the town, you know, is willing to put up some money for this. And I think we would need to understand a little bit about, you know, what that money would be used for, obviously, and then the opportunity to fundraise and the vehicles for that. So I know you and I were going to try to connect a little bit more on this, and I think we need to talk to our finance director too. But the thought was maybe creating something through possibly the Madison Foundation. And I don't know if you've had a conversation with them yet.
I had an initial conversation.
Okay.
We need to follow up, but I wanted your blessing before we went further. We are right now, as I say, we're using brain trust and creativity to get to this step, but we certainly are ready to lock down. And I have a case statement, Jeannie. I don't remember if I forwarded that to you. The committee reviewed it. I'll get feedback at this meeting, and then we certainly can fill that in. We'll use that. We'll have a formal document to engage people, but we need a place to move that money to. We have no structure as of yet. So the Madison Foundation said, yes, they'd be interested in pursuing this conversation. Give us the green light and we'll go ahead and do that.
Okay. And I think Ryan, who I know is on your committee, he has his hand raised. If you want to invite him up, it looks like Jeannie is. Yep.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good morning.
Hey, good morning. So, Roz, I just wanted to give a quick update, and maybe the select men and women could help with us. But we actually, so we did reach out to Madison Foundation. They recently, very recently, have separated from the New Haven Foundation, the
okay.
Greater New Haven Foundation, and so. I am in touch with Greater New Haven Foundation, and they suggested, out of courtesy, that we do also talk to Madison Foundation, which is completely separate at this point. So I did send them a note. I know there's a lot of folks on their board who we all know. I have not heard back from them. It's been about a week. So if anyone knows someone on the Madison Foundation and there may be some interest, I know I've worked with the Madison Foundation in the past in this capacity, but I'm not sure if they continue to collect funds and distribute funds on kind of the behalf of other groups. But it would be great if they are interested and willing to do that.
I think that we should move this forward because I know that there's still Scott Cochran through Youth and Family Services still works closely with them.
Actually, neighbor to neighbor, though, I think, right?
Is it? Yeah, it's probably through neighbor to neighbor. So, I guess the question is, this would be a separate kind of fund, right? That we would be setting up.
And it'll have a beginning and an end,
Yeah,
it's not
right,
ongoing.
right. And that would be obviously because to have it separate, people then can make donations and also get a tax benefit from that. And then this money can go towards, events and things like that. So I think let's try to focus on that. I'll try to do what I can too and kind of sort out the mechanicals and logistics of this. The one question I had though is we had talked about you might need some, seed money from the town. And have you kind of come up with what you think that amount of money would be?
No, so we at the last meeting, we put the structure in place for what
Okay.
these activities would be. So now we'll build the work plan, and from there a budget, and then we can be quite specific. It would be wonderful if first we get this place to, because I think we're pretty close. We've been, no matter who I ask, they are eager and interested. So I think sponsorship money will come easily, but I don't want to do that till we have the rest of this in place. And then once we have our work plan in place, then we can start to execute. And but as I say, that'll take some funding, whether that sponsorship money will come right away or we have to go into people's organizations' budgets and wait for that money. That will also put some strain on us. So if the town would be so willing, we would be grateful.
One name I just thought of that may help related to the Madison Foundation and Neighbor to Neighbor is Lori Heflin. Ryan, you may know her, but she would be the primary contact, I believe, for Neighbor to Neighbor.
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, of course.
So I think then maybe, obviously we're now in June, maybe we'll kind of prioritize this, how we get this going. And we could maybe come back at a July meeting and talk a little bit more and then, narrow down like what would be, because I think, I think the town should invest a little bit in this to get this moving, obviously, and then hopefully it'll kind of have legs at that point and then take off in terms of community involvement and donations and things like that. So figuring out what that amount of money is and what it would be used for. So we'll try to target trying to get that resolved over the next month. And I can work with your committee on that as well. And if other board members have ideas, and then we can kind of hopefully bring something forward towards the end of July in terms of getting you going in that direction.
And I can forward the case statement. It's a living document and would welcome your input.
Okay, great. All right, well, I know any other board member comments or questions?
Oh, excited. I mean, my goodness, this is amazing. So thank you for your initial presentation and looking forward to more. This is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And we're welcome to big ideas. I mean, we won't be able to do it all, but we want to engage all. So happy to accept fun ideas.
Great, and maybe one thought is if you want to have some sort of public hearing kind of thing, where you
Yes,
invite,
yes,
I'm just
yes.
thinking as you get a little more structure to everything, but still get some public input, maybe towards the end of the summer or September,
Yes,
we could help facilitate that and
excellent.
get some more just general ideas from the public. So, okay.
And we'll ask for a banner on the website, with once we lock down dates and venues, we'll have more to put out. But anything we can do to share and make people aware, that's what will make this successful.
Right.
Like an awesome opportunity for the Daniel Hand Marching Band to be involved too, by the way.
There
So
you go.
let's
There
get
you
Mr. Gage involved.
go. Yes, thank you.
All
Everyone
right.
will have a place.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Roz, and to your committee and Ryan and everybody. We look forward to this moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So next item on our agenda is item number 8, which is an update from our town and bond council on due diligence items regarding Academy. So I'd like to invite up, I think, Attorney Ritter is here as well as Attorney Olson. So Jeannie can raise them up. And unfortunately, Bruce isn't here yet. But I know he had specifically wanted to have this conversation about, what we're allowed to do. So I thought, we can always do some follow-ups if he has specific questions. Great. Good morning.
Good morning, Peggy. How are you? Good morning, everybody.
Good, good. And Carrie, are you able to,
I'm clicking on it.
okay, you're here, you're on though. You
I'm
can hear us?
definitely here, and I don't
Okay.
know why I keep hitting the video and it's not. Oh, there we go. Good morning.
Good morning. So there was a lot of conversations at our last meeting where we have a range of financing issues with the academy. And number one is that we have about $5.5 million still of funding that was approved during the bonds that were issued in December. That was allocated kind of to the academy project. And I think it was like 6.5 million, correct, Stacy? We have about 5.5 million left in those funds. So the question was, can we repurpose those funds? And how do we do that? And what can they be used for? I kind of relayed to them our conversations, and Matt, you and I had spoken, and I'd spoken also to Carrie, but maybe if we could just summarize again about the bond funds, and what the approval process would be for that, so we can, then make decisions going forward.
Sure. So again, there are two things that we can do with the unspent bond proceeds, and this really comes from federal guidance, right? This is not state law. The IRS would say that when you have unspent bond proceeds, in this case, because the bids just came back really high and well over what the town had originally budgeted for, you can use it for other capital projects, right? So that you're relieving other possible debt service and you're not overburdening the tax-exempt debt market. And the other option is to pay off some of your debt service, which is the same goal, right? The IRS's main goal is to not have you overissuing municipal bonds, taking up tax exemption, which they're subsidizing for municipalities. So by either paying off debt service or using it for other capital projects, you're complying with that stated goal and purpose. Okay. Now, how you then spend, if you were to transfer the unspent bond proceeds to other capital projects, generally speaking, right, unrelated to the community center. I think that's important because, Peggy, we've talked about that a little bit. It could be a different answer. I believe it's fine under the charter to go to a special town meeting, and here's why. It essentially becomes a special or supplemental appropriation. I don't love your charter that says the word special. To me, it's a supplemental appropriation, and town meeting would have to approve that. You've already gone to the voters. They've approved it. You have these proceeds. You're required under a federal regulation to use it for the two purposes I mentioned. And so in that case, I think a town meeting would be sufficient to reappropriate that money to whatever you wanted to do for other capital projects. If you're trying to do anything around the community center, I get a little more nervous if it was not in the original project description. And one might argue there might need to be a referendum again because, that has been obviously the voters have weighed in on a couple of times now. And I might get a little nervous about that depending what the plan was. So I think, Peggy, that's a pretty quick summary of where we'd be, and glad to take any questions.
I guess real quickly, I know we had talked about this, but I'm just trying to recall, demolition. If the town then, did move forward and want to demolish the building, would it be town meeting or referendum approval? Or is that more of a political calculation, I guess is the question, right?
Well, it may all be political
Yeah,
calculations.
they all
I'll
are,
leave that
but
to all of you
so,
to decide
yeah.
that. I would say that the demolition is so different than what the voters were asked for that I think it does fall into the bucket sort of a new capital project. And I think that might be safer at a town meeting. Whereas if you tried to build a community center at a new location or tried to stay on that theme, I think it gets harder to get there at town meeting. But I think demolition would be, probably something that would be okay. But people might dispute that, and you'd have to kind of get, I think, the temperature of folks on how they feel about that.
Okay.
Again, still going to town meeting, that would suffice, right?
I think so for demolition, yes.
Yeah.
Right. That's not something the voters voted down as part of
Right.
right. That was never something that you tried to build a community center, not demolish the building, right? So I think it's pretty different in that context.
Exactly.
Well, but then, there's the discussion about what you do use part of those funds then to create. I know the ideas out there are like a park or other kind of structures or landscaping or whatever. If there's a plan for that space after you demolish the building, does that kind of become a gray area, or you think that more is still kind of along the line as a new capital project?
I guess let's see what the plan is. And I think that the board is going to be very important to listen to on that. Carrie and I get put in a tough spot sometimes when there's a lot of dissension about what people think the proper approval process is. But I think that if you are reimagining a very different capital project with these unspent bond proceeds, we get more comfortable perhaps than if there's a nexus to the legacy project that passed the first time and the additional money did not pass the second time. I know that's not a concrete answer, but without something in front of us, it's just hard to give you 100% on what it would be.
Okay.
So walking that gray area, if we had saved the facade of the building, which has been thrown out there, I think as almost a monument or something, that might be too much of a connection to the old project. Is that?
I wouldn't say that. I think you just have to remember that you were given a certain amount of money by the voters to build a community center and not a dollar more. Okay. And you now are in a position where we have to figure out what to do with these unspent bond proceeds. And my assumption is that the vast majority of what you're talking about can probably be approved at a special town meeting. Okay. That's what I would say. But I've seen things or been asked about things that seem to be looking to, sort of change the scope of the project as presented to voters in a way that still has a strong nexus to it. And that might just get a little stickier if you're right. We don't want a situation where voters said no and then they feel like they were overridden. But a park with landscaping and a facade is not a community center, I would argue. Okay.
Well, and I think really we've always looked at this as what do we feel is getting really hearing the voice of the people, right? So when we sold Island Avenue, that only required a town meeting, but we took it to referendum because it was a high profile project that we knew people were very passionate about, and it was a big asset for the town to sell, right? So the question I think will ultimately become, do we as a board want to make these decisions for the public, or do we want the public to make the decisions? So I think that's where
Especially
as
around
we
demo.
especially around demo and so I think as we work through this or whatever the choices are, we may decide we'd rather have the public decide versus us because I think it is. But let's have those conversations, and as we narrow down what we think that final choice is going to be, then we can talk about, I guess, probably reach back out to Matt and Carrie to make sure that we're good with, the approval process that we're following. But I do think the last conversation we had at our board was to talk about other capital projects because we have a backlog of other capital projects, and we're sitting there paying interest, right, on this debt that we issued back in December. And so the thought was, okay, do we want to dip into the academy money, right, that's sitting there, and use it for some other capital projects that are more urgent? And so to do that, from what I recall speaking to Matt and Carrie, was that that could be done through the town meeting process. And so we could take that 5.5 million. That doesn't help us with Academy long term, right? Because we're going to need funding for Academy no matter what we see. But there is a process through town meeting to take that money and use it for something else. And Carrie, you had mentioned that you felt that it had to be something that was in the capital plan. If we're going to take it to something totally different, not related to Academy, your thoughts was that it should probably be something currently in the capital plan.
My thought is if you're going to go the town meeting route as opposed to a referendum, that it would be safer to do something that has already been approved by the people, use the funds for something that's already been approved by the people, as opposed to a completely new capital project, which again, you're going to be walking that fine line. You could probably take it to town meeting, but you also might get way more objection. And my advice might be at that point, you probably should take it to a referendum. It's not a small amount of money, right? It's a good chunk of money. I know we had discussed the firehouse project, which was already approved and came in over budget as well. So you've been a little stymied there. And I also understand that those funds have a deadline, right? For the firehouse. There's a deadline to use those funds. Am I
Yeah.
correct, Stacy?
Yep.
Yeah. And yep.
And that project had already been approved by the people. And so, to me, something like that would be a much safer course to pursue, or something else on your capital project list that had already been approved is a safer way to reappropriate or reuse those funds without going to referendum.
Okay. It makes sense. Okay. So no, that's helpful. And I think we're going to talk in a few minutes a little bit about kind of the status of the different projects in town. I did prepare something, just to kind of talk through our process for Academy moving forward. Let me just see if I can get this up. And I did put like a slide together, which, let's see. Can you see this?
It's tiny, but yes.
Okay, let me do presentation mode. Is that
Yep. Yep.
visible? Okay.
Perfect. Yep.
All right, great. So this is the world we're living in right now. And it is all the different ideas that have been flowing through about where we take Academy from here, knowing the kind of community centers we had all envisioned it is kind of off the table now based on the very strong vote that we had a few weeks ago. And so we have this kind of two paths. One is actually just a redevelopment of the building for a different purpose. And then the other is looking at demolishing it and creating public space somehow, or keeping it, as a spot to put a new building in the future that the town might need. And then there's somewhere in between. And this is stuff that we've heard out there, I think, in social media. We've had emails from the public about their ideas. And I will say a lot of this was already explored. Some of it might have been almost 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But I think as we talked about at our last meeting, given we are in a new environment, is it worth kind of taking that next step and doing a test of the marketplace to see, is there some way to still save the historic structure, which people still feel is an important part of Madison's history. We just talked about our 200th anniversary coming up next year, and the significance of the building in our history. Is there a way to preserve this without the town having to fund the entire project and have it be that same vision? So I've started having conversations with some experts, economic development people that are experienced in this area. And the other piece is housing, which is very much front and center with what's going on in the state in terms of affordability, but also just demand for housing, the shortage of housing. There's a lot more funding available for housing than there was when this was looked at back in 2017. So do we take this out and have just an expression of interest process? And as I've talked to people, they thought, keep it open-ended, just see what the market, what interest there would be in the building. The good thing is there's a lot of information on the building now that we can offer during this process because of all the consultants and engineers and everything that have been through the building. Put this out there as a, here's the building, come to us with your ideas. And I think the one thing we heard loud and clear throughout this whole process over the last 20 years is people don't want to let go of the land. So this would not include development of any kind of green space or the ball fields, and it would be probably a land lease in some way to whoever actually, just for the building itself, the ground that the building itself is on. I talked about at our last meeting coming forward with the draft RFP. I don't have that yet. I've been trying to do more due diligence on this. I've had a lot of interesting conversations. We've met also with a resident of Madison who has a lot of experience in this area. And so I was going to put a little working group together that included some staff and some of these experts, and then come to the board in July with a draft RFP or expression of interest that we would put out. And then the idea was we would get some proposals back by the end of the summer, early fall. And then we will really know, is there a way to save this building still that doesn't cost the town of Madison, $20 million? But we see it as a vibrancy part of our downtown. And so I'd like the board's, I guess, support to kind of move that piece forward because it'll take a little bit more time. I've also have the RFP that was launched back in 2017, so we finally found that. And that we would look at that and keep this kind of open-ended and see where interest is. The housing piece is intriguing. We've seen what happened in Clinton, that they've been able to turn that into senior housing. And their building is in better condition from what I was told than ours is, because it hasn't been sitting empty for 20 years. It was only closed, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. But it's, and there's structural things I've been told about our building that make it more difficult to create lots of housing units in it, because of some of the foundational issues and the way the walls are structured. So I don't know, Scott, you attended one of the meetings with one of our residents about this. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm super supportive of at least, going out to the market and testing it. I mean, there's no guarantees of what will come back, whether we get anything back, who the heck knows. But I think, at least in talking to this particular resident who's got expertise in real estate and development, he was super optimistic. I know we've talked to Roz Kama as another example of somebody we've talked to that, has some sort of a pulse on the market, so to speak. And I think, senses maybe there might be some interest out there. But again, we're all sort of at the mercy of how the economy is going, and the market is what it is at this point. So I don't think there's any guarantees on what will come back. But I think, we heard not only save the land, but save the building in that survey a few years back. And so I don't think there's any harm in one last shot to try to save the building.
Peggy, I'm still of a mind that public expects us to do our due diligence as a board of selectmen, and before we propose anything back to the public, either a town meeting or referendum, I think the public expects us to review all the options and use our best judgment as to what to propose. But I think it's really incumbent upon us to go through this exercise of seeing what the market's interest would be in this building.
Jen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree about due diligence. I agree that, we need to really make sure that we're doing our homework before we present options to the public. I think we need to set a deadline for ourselves on this. You
I
know,
like that, Jen.
I
Yeah,
don't think we can let this carry on in perpetuity anymore. It's just too long. I'm going to need personally a lot of convincing that development for housing or commercial space or anything like that is appropriate for this area in town. Just because of it really is like our part of our center of town when you think about um, location to surf club and the library and everything like that. And the fact that we don't own our own town green space, that you know is church property, and at any point in time they can decide that they are going to sell that land or do something different with it. So redevelopment, I'm going to need a lot of convincing on, but you know, ultimately at the end of the day, think the investigation process would be the most fair for the community.
So, and I think this is where if we're going to take this, I think we would need to have some sort of strong community verdict on this, you know, through referendum, I would argue, especially if we're going to redevelop the building and do it in this way. I would think we would really need to take
totally.
the public to make a decision. Um, so, but I think that, you know, it's interesting you think that in terms of that the location isn't ideal for housing, because I actually think it's the absolute opposite, because we're in basically our TOD, right? Our transit oriented district. We're near a train station, we're near all the public amenities.
Right.
And
But we've talked about this. The train
yeah,
station, I mean, the schedule that we have in this town is not a workable train schedule for anybody that really needs to use it to commute for work. And when you look at the HUD, you know, the HUD chart for what would be considered affordable housing, most of those folks are going to be taking cars to work anyway. So
well, you're on the bus line as well, and then I'm not even saying it has to be affordable. You know, that's where we have to decide, you know, what we want to see from there. There's also, I like the senior housing concept, because you're also walking distance to the senior center, walking distance to the library, you're downtown. So, but that's a conversation we'll have, and we'll see. This, once again, I think there might be some structural issues with the building and the condition of the building that might make it just not economically feasible for any kind of housing. It's a likely outcome.
Development or any
Yeah,
development for that
I know.
matter.
So no use having that debate now. But I think it's worthy of exploration. That's all. And I think that we'll hear from the marketplace for sure. You know, whether or not this is even an option. And it may be that the town, you know, a lot of people in town just don't want to see housing there. That was kind of the discussion that was in 2017. And I will say that even I went to all those developer presentations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of them were really, you know, intriguing. You know, I think it was overreach in terms of the amount of land that was being used, and then this idea that we wouldn't own that land at all going forward was really
That was the crux of
yeah,
it, right? It was the
yeah,
land that they wanted the entire parcel as
yeah,
opposed to just where the building was.
yeah. But I think that there will be you know, like I said, we could get zero interest on this. So I think, and then the demolition piece, there's also been ideas about demolishing the gym and keeping the front end of the building. You know, the demolition piece will be getting better numbers this summer. I think Ben talked to that last time, that when we get the Ryerson analysis back, we'll have a much better idea of what it'll cost to take Academy down. So this will all kind of come in at the same point. In terms of timeline, I think that, you know, I would give us till the end of this year to kind of coalesce around an option. I think that's reasonable. You know, given it's been vacant for over 20 years now, to give us till the end of 2025 to kind of decide path forward. Does that sound reasonable to the board to target that?
Yeah, I mean, it's sooner than later. I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, if referendum, would it make more sense to try to do a November referendum?
I think
Right.
the problem with that is because it's state approved ballot, we would have to have our decision by September 1st, I think, and that's the
Right.
problem. So I think this would have to then be, if we were going to do a vote, it would have to either do a special in beginning of 2026 or put it on the 2026 budget referendum. I don't think we're going to be in shape to do anything by September 1st for the state, for the ballot.
Mhm.
In response to Jen's comment, I think as long as we're showing steady progress, very visible progress to the public, I'm not so concerned that it might take till the end of the year. I just think we have to keep it moving. I think that's what Jen was trying to say.
I don't want to see us stall out on this process, and we need to wrap it up at some point.
In one
And
way or another.
I think if we, gave ourselves, a set of marching orders, so to speak, and said we need to have something on a referendum ballot by, the 2026 budget referendum at the latest. Like I feel like that would be a reasonable
I agree with
course
you,
of
Jen.
action.
I agree. Yeah, I think
Go ahead.
that gives us plenty of time, but also we could do it earlier than that too. So I think
Right.
that's sort of the drop dead.
Yeah.
So, Jen, I think it would be good to have the draft, the working group, to put this draft together. It'd be good to have it bipartisan. So I don't know if you want to talk to Bruce. One of you would participate with me on that.
Sure.
So that
Yeah,
we
I'll
can,
have a conversation
so
with Bruce about
everybody's good on timelines and what we have in there and all that stuff. I think that would be good. And then I think we just go from there. So we've kind of got some hard deadlines. We understand the timing. Like I would have loved to have had something to put on the November, but when I started talking to Nancy about the timeline again, and I was like, there's no way
Mhm.
we're going to get it to that point and with whatever it is, the question, the dollar amount, by September, early September. So
Right. Well, and I remember from last meeting too, the historical deed analysis was also happening, and we need to make sure that we've got that
yeah.
teed up and taken into consideration. So,
And the demo numbers aren't going to be
Yeah.
ready really till the fall. So I know we have with our attorneys here, I just maybe thought we could spend a few minutes on the outstanding funds again. I was trying to summarize kind of what they were saying because we have the remaining bonds. But then we also have the two grants. And so I just wanted to highlight that I know there's been a lot of conversation about repurposing the grants and can't we just use them for something else? It's really not up to just us. It's the entities that gave us the funding. And so I've had some conversations with our state delegation that they think there would be openness to repurposing it for another project, but that would actually have to be approved by the State Bond Commission because the USDA grant came through the Urban Act process, which was State Bond Commission. And there was also a possible need, depending on what was going on, what ultimately we would be using it for, of legislature approval. So that was just some conversations I had. As we get closer to what we might want to consider this grant for, I think then we're gonna have to go back and really vet it with DECD and the state. But what I heard was that the focus of a lot of Urban Act and the kind of purpose of what we were awarded this funds for was something that's community oriented, economic development. And then there'd be a lot of support for housing related projects. So that was kind of seen as something that they think there could be some support to transition the funds over to another project. If we look at examples, one of the things that kind of keeps, we're going to be going through the process of talking about our closed schools this summer, Jeffrey and Ryerson. And there have been a lot of ideas in the public as well as we've had conversations. I've had conversations with different people and also on the facilities committee about Jeffrey and using that as a alternative site for a possible community center that could house youth and family and then also, create community space. So those are the things we might be able to repurpose those funds. The federal one, we did have a call with the USDA and it's much more strict. They said, you can repurpose, you can kind of use this in a different way than perhaps we envisioned, but it has to fall within the parameters of what was written into law. And what was written into law was Town of Madison for Academy Community Center. So it's a much more narrow thing. That doesn't mean the location necessarily has to be the same, but it needs to be basically something that we can, argue is following within the law of what the funds were appropriated for. So, and then we could just go through USDA review of any changes to the project. That one is a little bit, trickier, obviously. And then we might, depending on if we try to use the DECD grant for something completely different, then the federal grant, I think, is really tied to a community center concept. So if we walk away completely from a community center concept, even if we try to do it at Jeffrey, we're going to have a tougher time trying to keep that grant. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more, and understand that, the good news is that and I've had conversations with the chair of the facilities committee, we've all kind of talked about Jeffrey being worthy of keeping that land because of the strategic location with our schools. If they're going through a process right now to identify, space utilization and need for space. And so they're going to finish that work. And we've identified that we need space for youth and family services. I think if those come together, it might be worthy having a conversation about Jeffrey, because that actually would mean we could probably use both grants. And that could be a nice chunk of money, in addition to possibly reappropriating, maybe by voting, using some of the bond funds, to come up with a project that could turn Jeffrey into a community center, youth and family. We talked about, other things that could get rolled into that building to make it efficient. So we're going to start exploring that a little bit more. I've had conversations with the school district as well, and the feasibility, and is that worthy of taking to the next step? But it's the natural, if we want to keep it simple, for using those grants.
I have to say that's a concept that I have been a fan of. Expanding youth and family services footprint over to Jeffrey, also the community center use. One of the big things that folks talked about with the community center was a place for kids to go to, especially after school, and hang out and have, a fun, safe place to go. And what's better than a building that's already connected to, two of the campuses, Polson and Han, that, for students that would probably most heavily utilize something like that in the after school hours. Plus it has a gym, it has a kitchen space, areas to be built out for offices and, other community use and that sort of thing. So I think that's a really worthy process to investigate.
Okay. And I think also it touches on this academy decision, for timeline, right? Do we want to keep our powder dry, so to speak, on the bond funds until we kind of know where we're going with this? Because that would be partnered with these grants, right? So, so that's where I think we need to think about this a little bit more in terms of tapping into the bond funds. I apologize because I know that Carrie and Matt are still on, and I just wanted to, if there's any further questions for them, let them
There's
go.
no need to apologize. I think it's very interesting to hear the ideas. I did want to just add one thing on the timeline. If in fact you do get some interest in redevelopment of the academy, I think in order to actually put something forward, whoever's interested may have to do a bit of due diligence to determine whether they can actually do what they want to do at the academy. And that might push your timeline a little bit. So I just wanted to, everybody to be aware that, it took a long time in Clinton to get to the point where we're actually closing. So I thought it was, worth it to just mention that somebody might look at this project and think this is great and propose looking into it further, but then looking into it further could take some time.
Fair enough. And I think this is more picking the horse and path, and
Yes.
if it falls apart for whatever reason, we'll have to deal with that, right? Financing is always going to be an issue too, right? There's interest and then there's actually execution and financing and all that, and that'll take a while.
Well, and again, there is a lot of opportunity out there right now with tax credits and stuff for this type of development. I'm not sure about the structure of whether in some of those instances they would have to own the land that the building sits on for the tax credits and couldn't do a lease. I don't know for a fact. I don't know.
And that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that piece of it. Would that impact the financing? I know Clinton sold the property, I
They
think.
did, and so
July.
I'm in the middle of going through what's called a cypre action because there were some deed restrictions on the use of the property, and that's been a huge project going through the AG's office. We're now in court getting a judge to lift those because they were selling the property to the developer and leasing back for $1 a portion of the building for a senior center. So so it was sort of a reverse of what you're talking about.
Well, we know how Island Avenue got very complicated with right of
Yeah.
first refusals and everything as well. So, but that's
Exactly.
where I know you have your historic, your person that's on historic deeds doing the research. We'll get that report soon, hopefully.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, good. So if there's no other questions for Carrie or Matt, I guess we can let you guys go. I know you've got a lot going on.
Yeah, if you need anything, just holler.
Okay.
It's nice to see
Okay.
everybody again. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
It's nice to see you.
All
Yeah.
right, great.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Yes.
So I thought, then we can talk a little bit more about the next item on the agenda, which is kind of a following on this, is the town capital projects. So I've got this up here. So this is basically near-term projects that need additional funding. And some of these were planned for. We've known that we had to do it, all of these, except for the baseball field, that we needed to do a supplemental appropriation, and we already knew that. But the dollar amounts have changed. And one project that came up is in your packet, and this has to do with the turf field project. And I know there were some comments made at the beginning of the meeting. These are projects that have been in the capital plan for an extensive period of time. And one was for the girls softball field, which is a turf replacement. That's already artificial turf. And that was done in the early 2000s, and that was actually done through a steep grant. So that is, it's got to be close to 20 years now that field has been in place. And so it's well overdue for replacement. And then the boys had always been targeted as also being installed for artificial turf. This was decisions made by the school district. And so the thought was comboing these and bidding them out because you get some cost savings by doing that, doing both fields at the same time. And so unfortunately, when we went out to bid, what we had in the CIP budget, which had been put together in 2018 or something like that, I think your memo talks about that. And then just historically, we were just growing CIP at 3 or 4% a year, I think. Obviously, prices have gone way up. And so we're going to have a longer conversation about what escalations we use in CIP. And I don't know, Stacy, was that ever talked about in the meetings last November about, how we're growing that account? Because I think we've just had these, placeholder numbers that we've just clipped along at 3 and we're seeing, obviously, the market is obviously very different now. And maybe we talk about a one-time adjustment to all the projects, and then grow it out at 4% or something, but we'll have to talk about our assumptions. But this project came back. We got the bids last week or the week before, and we were short $1.6 million, which is a significant number for the project. It's almost double. So we have to make some decisions on that. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but I just wanted to walk. So that's one that might have to have a capital outlay, whether we go with just the softball or we go with the whole project. The firehouse is one we talked about at our last meeting. And that was one where we had been budgeting around $800,000, $900,000 as a town match. And now it's requiring significantly more for us to move forward. Both of these are time sensitive. We have we have to make a decision about the bids, current bids, or do we move forward with just a partial project on the fields? The OC has a hard stop because of the federal grant. And that has a performance period ending around June 2026. So we kind of have to make a no-go decision on that. And then if you look at the other projects over the next 12 months that will need supplemental funding, the Scotland Avenue one, we had always budgeted because that's another one where we have grants. And so our town match for that was 1.6 million. We're budgeting that still. We haven't gone out to bid on that. It's in design. And then Downtown Center is another one, same thing. We've budgeted 594,000. So these have been on our running list of what we knew we had to do in terms of match. It's in CIP. Hopefully we won't get any surprises when we go out to bid on those. Those are more recent projects too. So I'm hoping that we have a little higher confidence in terms of our estimates. And then we had talked a lot about major roads, and Stacy, just remind me, because I didn't get to connect with you on this. The major roads, it was 750, right? That the CIP committee was recommending to just
Yes.
shore up the account, because this is another one where the cost of paving has gone up significantly. And if we want to kind of keep to our schedule, they thought we needed an infusion of 750 into the paving account or the major roads account. But then in addition to that, we had that beta study that came back that said, if we want to improve overall the rating of all our roads, that we need to up our annual budget for paving. And right now we do around $1.3 million through the different funds, and they're recommending $2 million a year. So we had talked about, this was a couple meetings back, about doing an infusion to kind of front load some of that additional funding. And that was going to be talked about this year, but we never came up with a number. Public Works was going to work on this and come back with a number that would be in addition to the 750. So it might be a higher number. So these are the things I think we were just, if we look at appropriations, these were the ones that were kind of on the radar for the next, 6 to 12 months for projects. And that's why when at our last meeting, I'd said, well, we do have this academy bonding, we could decide to use that instead, or if we want to keep the academy money powder dry, so to speak, to keep it there for demolition, which is going to be expensive. I think we're budgeting 4 million for demolition or other things that we do with that building. Do we want to just keep that off and just focus on as appropriation here? The next item on the agenda talks about the softball field, but I just wanted to put this in context, because it's hard to make decisions when you want to know what's coming up, right? And I think the two most things that we have to make some decisions on are the turf field and the firehouse project. So with that, then should we just focus on the turf field right now? I think the firehouse project, we're going to get firm. Now it got pushed out to July 2nd, I guess, that we'll get a firm number back from Munger Construction, which is our design build contractor. And they're pretty confident the numbers will come in line with what, we talked about at our last meeting. If we move forward with this, we would have to do an appropriation now of $2.6 million to keep the project on schedule. So that will be something we need to make a decision soon on that, and that would probably come up at our next meeting. And then where that $2.6 million comes from, if we want to go into the bond funds, or do we want to just do an appropriation, or I think our board needs to kind of pick a path, so to speak. But the softball field, which we have as an action item on here, and I thought we could invite Ben up to talk. If everybody's good going to item number 10 now.
Mhm.
And you did get a memo about this. So I'll move on to item 10. Discuss and take possible action to approve an appropriation from the undesignated fund balance for the Green Hill softball outfield turf replacement project pending Board of Finance approval budgeted in fiscal year 2025-2026 CIP. And then I can amend it with an amount and stuff, but in a second, just so we can talk about it. Did I get a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay, so,
So you're quicker than that, Jen.
I was pulling up the memo.
That's awesome.
I see Bruce, you've joined us. I didn't notice, you've been on for this for a while, or I just kind of,
Just a little bit of the tail end of this last conversation.
okay, just want to make sure you're kind of know where we are. So, and maybe if we can invite up, I'll stop sharing this. Invite up. Okay, Ben's here. I couldn't see who was on. So, Ben, why don't you just kind of walk through? I know you did the memo, but just highlight for the conversation where we are on this project.
Sure. I hope you're all getting used to my memo format by now. I know it's got a lot of numbers in it. And then there was a supplementary piece with that as well that lined up all the bids and everything else we've done with these two projects. But both projects have been in the capital plan for quite some time. Their budget numbers had a little bit of escalation in them, but still, like for an example, the baseball field went in 2021. And its budget over the years was only escalated a total of 7.6%. Softball field's been in the budget since 2018. So these things have been in there a while. I think, Peggy has said that we should probably consider a kind of a gross adjustment to our capital plan. I think that's probably a good idea as we start to move that forward. But anyway, the bids came back for both of these projects. Again, we executed them operationally together. We're hoping to take advantage of the economy of scale and do the larger project, which is the baseball field, because that's a conversion, and then tie in the softball field, which is just a rip and replace of the actual turf itself. We knew going into this, even when we were doing designer RFPs, that our budget on here was really tight. To the point of right on the cusp of unreasonable or unreasonably low. So not to have deja vu to Academy, but we did break out some alternates. The softball field was an alternate because that was the way to kind of tag on to that larger project. But then we also did 3 other alternates as well to try to hopefully catch our budget number. So even if you delete all the alternates other than just doing the softball field, the bids were $1 million over budget of the 2 project budgets combined. When you add in the alternates, which are alternates, but they are really desired elements to the project, we had a lot of discussion about that, where we are just the bids themselves are 1.5 million. That would leave us with no contingency in the project at all. So when you add in a 5% contingency, because stuff happens during construction, that would require a supplemental appropriation of $1.6 million. Conversation turned to how do we just execute the softball field? If the softball field was going to be a standalone project, again, the price we have for the softball field is part of a larger project. You can't really just execute an alternate. Because the contractor has all their mobilization costs, their bonding, all their kind of fixed costs, let's call it, tied up in the baseball field. And then it's okay, you just add on the softball field, the smaller piece. So if you're just going to do the softball field project, that really has to get bid out independently. Not a hard process to do. We could just scrape it out and get it out to the marketplace. But we reconfigured our budget number for that. We would want an overall budget of a minimum of $625,000 to do softball on its own, which would require a supplemental appropriation of $228,200. We would then rebid the softball field like within the next couple of weeks. Programmatically, athletics and Beach and Rec have said, we need to get this done. The field is borderline safety risk right now. So they would, originally we were hoping to have the field done in September, October. Now we would just rebid it, hopefully get out the contract in probably late August, early September, and get that thing moving. If we did want to continue to do both projects together, it's as simple as just awarding the bids we have in hand right now. We've already done our scope review meetings with both of the bidders, actually. And we're actually hoping to do that award today if we were within budget, and get these things moving this summer. So if the desire was to continue to do both of those projects, obviously it takes some time to get the special appropriation. Bids are good until July 27th, so it is technically feasible. We would then have to go back to the low bidder just to make sure we were good on timing, because as part of their bid, there was a timeline established with that too, and that timeline would still have to work for them because we've essentially broken that timeline because we were originally going to mobilize in late June. So again, the decision at hand is: do we award the whole thing? Go for it. Let's get all this over with now. Let's take advantage of that economy of scale. Or do we just say, hey, the softball field is relatively short money. It's a large percentage, but it's a much smaller dollar amount, and at least get the field addressed. That's kind of way beyond the end of its life. Knock that out. Regroup on the baseball field. We could do that through next year's, or the process that's going to start in a month or so, with the SIP process, and go back at this next year. If we were going to do that, I would add a little bit more to that baseball project budget if we were going to bid it next year. But that's where we are.
Ben, can I ask a question just because I'm not familiar with the softball field? How much of it is covered in turf? Is it infield, outfield, base paths, or
It's the whole thing.
it's the
Yeah.
whole thing? Okay.
Yeah.
It's rough.
It was
the
rough.
good news
It
is
was rough
really
in
gotten
2020,
its
Ben.
Yeah, that field has been used. It's used all the time. It's always tough when you build fields, even natural grass fields. Like, the more you use it, the shorter the life is, right? But if if it's not used, then it's a waste of money. So it's always finding that balance.
And I think from what just conversations I've had with Austin also, who I think is here, that he definitely feels this is a priority, the softball field, because of this, just the condition of it, and the fact this has been in since 2017, and needed replacement. And if there would be a way to move this forward, it's more of a manageable amount that it's still expensive, obviously, we all recognize, but that it would be. And I spoke also to the superintendent, and very supportive if we could at least get the softball field done.
He's on too. I don't know if you need to elevate him. He's
Oh,
here.
is he on there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to ask Stacy to update us on the fund balance.
Sure. Where we are right now, we have 21 million as a total, over a net number of about 9.6 million if we're using the Board of Finance goal to set aside as a reserve.
Thank
So
you.
that's the net amount. There's
That's
six
9.6
available
million to net.
if you use that 12, I think, or 13% kind of set aside.
12 and a half. Yep.
12.5%. Yeah. Okay. So Dr. Cook is here as well. So just maybe just to, talk about why this is such a priority, that would be helpful for the girls.
Yes, thank you. As said, I think the original plan was probably to replace this in 2017. That was probably about the target of the useful life. We're beyond that. It is close to getting to a safety concern. I think it's basically not playing on much cushion anymore. And as Ben said, it's heavily used, as a town facility, which is great. And there's already synthetic turf, as also was said. So it's really just a replacement of that's needed.
I know we had a member of the public earlier just talk about, the concerns about artificial turf. But I know
Health and safety, yeah.
Yeah, and I know the board is always looking at this stuff, right? The Board of Education and the athletic department, and And I'm assuming that they continue to believe this is like the better path to go on for the field.
Yes, we do. Yes, we follow that very closely, but feel this is the best path forward. As we've said, it's already synthetic turf.
And Austin, can you talk about, because this is used extensively by other groups besides the schools?
Correct. So Danielham softball, Polson softball, Madison Little League, Madison travel baseball, travel softball, PE classes at the high school in Polson. It's used pretty much 365 days a year. We do everything we can to maintain it. We hire a company to come in at least once a year to groom and maintain and restitch. We just had to replace a portion of the pitcher's circle this season that was torn. It's in rough shape. We had many discussions about giving it a couple of years to include it into this much larger project with the baseball field, so we held off. But I think we're at the point now where, it just has to be done. It's not a want, it's a need at this point.
Austin, do we require or encourage users of the field to wear turf cleats as opposed to dirt cleats?
So you can't wear metal spikes, but you could wear turf shoes or the rubber spikes.
Okay.
So I guess then the question is, and I know when I'd spoken to board members last week, I was focusing on the amount of the actual bids, but as I've learned, there's a big additional cost if you bid this out separately. So the plan would be if we were to approve the additional funding Ben is recommending, which would be $228,200. The project will be rebid immediately, and then we would have hopefully funding. If anything, maybe, if we get the bid, if we rebid it, we might get some more interest and it could come down a little bit possibly or whatever, but this would be our max budget, right? It'd be an up to number. And then the bids would come back, and then hopefully this would happen in the fall, which I assume creates a little chaos in the schedule, right? But the project would be completed this fall. So I guess the question is, are people comfortable? This has to go to Board of Finance, and their meeting is on the 18th. Are we comfortable moving forward with kind of an up to of $228,200?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think just to react though to Fran's comments too, I think he raises some really good and interesting points. I certainly would be amenable, in parallel to getting more information, whether it's via the state health department, whether it's via Trent, whether it's via, the person that Fran suggested, just so that we all become more educated. I was the president of Little League forever, and obviously, these concerns over artificial fields have been kind of following us for years and years and years. So it's not a new issue, but I think it never hurts us to get educated on the health concerns and just make sure we're all doing all the right things for our citizens.
And then a question for Dr. Cook and for Austin. Do we have heat policies in place for both the school and the rec athletic departments that are using the fields? Because, one of the things in the presentation and what I've experienced myself working as an athletic trainer for a number of years is that the field conditions can get much hotter than they do on a regular grass field. So do we have heat policy in place for both departments independently?
I can speak to us. We do. It's doesn't come into play with softball, obviously. Typically because of the for us for the time of season. But for football is where that comes into play, and we have the cooling tubs available and things like that at the start of the season. That's more likely where we see it is August, the start of practice. Field hockey also at the school starts. Soccer down the surf club. So
And
yeah,
they make adjustments to practice time or what they're allowed to do based on temperature.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. No, great question. Yeah, we're constantly monitoring that at that time of the year.
And then Austin, how does the Beach and Rec Department handle that for rentals of the facilities over the summer?
So Little League is typically the group that uses it in the summer. And they have their own policies and procedures that go along with that. But I've spent countless days and nights at the Polson softball field, and it's much cooler at the Polson softball field than it is anywhere else in town. But that said, it does get warm in the summer, but Little League has their own policies that they follow.
Okay.
Well, maybe it's worth reviewing, to make sure that everything is, because, up to date with the most, most recent scientific, data and everything. And I mean, yeah, I think it's always good to reflect because these are very expensive. We're going to be facing a strong as well in terms of replacement of that. And that's going to be a massive, expensive project. So as we continue to, to artificial turf these fields, we're kind of making big commitments, capital commitments. And then obviously, the safety factor is important too. So, because I'm trying to think, the only other is strong, right? Right now we have the two. Is there another field that's artificial?
The field, the football practice field, right?
Oh, at the high school.
At the high school.
Yeah, the field outside the high school that field hockey, lacrosse will play on. Practice for football is synthetic turf, and softball, and then obviously strong.
And I would advocate
Proposed to the baseball field too, so that would be converted to synthetic, correct?
Yeah.
And I would advocate for Terry, the athletic trainer from the high school, to be involved in any conversations about turf fields as well, for her perspective on safety consideration.
Well, and I know one of the things that had been talked about in CIP about having a separate field account, right? Field replacement account. And so you can kind of track them all together. Right now we handle them as one-off projects, but it might be helpful to have just fields. So you can see kind of, we just spent a lot of money on exchange field, right? Which was not artificial, but it's beautiful now. So just being able to kind of monitor all that and so we can kind of put a dollar figure about the investments that we're making, that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So if board members are good, then I'd like to amend my motion and discuss and take action to approve an appropriation of up to $228,200 from the undesignated fund balance for the Green Hill Softball Outfield Turf Replacement Project pending Board of Finance approval, budgeted in fiscal year 2025-2026 CIP.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. So this will go on, Craig, to Board of Finance and then and Ben, and then hopefully we can kind of move forward with a bid from there. So
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
So item number 11 is a little bit just, I think we need to, this is the discussion of the firehouse project, which is the other kind of more urgent one on that list of needing supplemental funds. And we're looking at roughly $2.6 million. That's going to get refined, I think, once we hear back on July 2nd of the actual final project numbers. And I think the question is, are we comfortable moving forward? And do we want it, my recommendation is that we at July 2nd, get our final numbers and then approve whatever the funding gap is at that point in time. And it'll have to go through Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and town meeting approval. So Sam, I know you have some views on this, and I think timing is really important with this project. This has been in CIP a long time. We've had a presentation on the need. I know there's been a lot of community conversations about this, the need, but the reality is this is the process that we go through, and it takes a long time to get from, the inception and concept of a project to the point of actually awarding a construction contract. And we are here, and it's gone through all the appropriate approvals. We also approved the grants to help pay for this. So we do have a $2.5 million federal grant that has a tight timeline on it. And so we're kind of at this point now, we've got to decide, are we going to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, to say the least, it's been a cumbersome, process to go through all the federal grants and everything else to get all the approvals. And, along the way, we've kept the Board of Selectmen up to date and everybody was fine with it. Listen, I'm not happy about the overage on this budget myself. But I guess, it's the climate that we're in right now with all these higher costs. Realistically, we're still getting almost $2.5 million from the federal government. I don't think we should, dismiss that. I think that's still a pretty good chunk of change to get this project done and going. I wish there was a better solution, but unfortunately, to do it the right way, this is what you really need to spend. If we try to move it, we'd have to go back to the federal government. And I think at this point, if we go back to the feds to get different approvals, they'll just pull the money back. So I think the best course of action is just to move forward and, just get it built.
So one question I have, so I noticed that in the email that I guess the date got pushed out, right, for the final kind of costing of the project to July 2nd, correct?
Yeah, so what we're waiting for is a GMP, which is because it's a design build agreement, that's the guaranteed maximum price. So Munger is our contractor on this, but what they do is they take the plans and push them all out to their network of subcontractors. Then they come back to us and they say, this is the maximum price it's going to be. However, the budget number for that project, the construction estimate that they gave us during we were at about 50% design development drawings at that time, is still solid. So our overall, like the town's budget on this that we're pushing out of 5.394, that's still valid. I mean, that's and even with my discussions with their chief estimator yesterday, the reason the GMP is getting pushed out 2 weeks is because of something with the pile foundation. That's been a big wild card in this project because of the soils and subsurface conditions. When they were bidding this out, they actually had a couple of vendors come back to them, pile vendors, with an alternative approach because there was a design characteristic that they had to meet in their bids, and they said, "Hey, did you guys think about doing this?" And it was to the point. I think you said to Peggy, I think their engineers were like, "Oh, why didn't we think of that?" It's a really interesting idea. I won't get too technical on it, but it's using a different type of pile system and what's called a MAP foundation. Because it ended up being in design development, we thought it was going to need about 50 piles, which are big helical screws driven into the ground that the foundation sits on. We're up to 102, which on a pretty small footprint is nuts. So by the time when you have each one of these piles or a grouping of piles has a concrete cap that sits on it, and then you put your foundation walls on top of that. Well, we're up to so many different piles and so many different pile caps. They started saying, well, why don't we do something a little differently here? So they asked for another 2 weeks because they want to now rebid that idea, and they think it'll actually save the project money in the long run. So the construction, in the meantime, they're getting all their other different sub bids back, and he said those are looking great. So there is no information that they have right now that would make them think that construction budget that they circulated to us a few months ago isn't still a valid number. So again, time is of the essence with this project. It's a 12-month build. So even if we literally stuck a shovel on the ground tomorrow or started drilling piles, we're going to have to figure this out with the grant. So the sooner the better on this one. So technically you could take action to set a supplemental appropriation at the 5.3 budget number. Completely understand if you want to wait for that GMP. But like with most projects, you're establishing your budget before you're doing your bid process. But of course, now I'm saying this on the tails of multiple projects that have come back in under these low budgets. So wait until the 7.2, I get it. But in this one, an additional 3-4 weeks actually does make me nervous on the project schedule. But either way.
So one thing I just want to comment on is that the Board of Finance has not really had an update at all on this project formally. And so they've requested a meeting to have a discussion first, right, before being asked to vote on any appropriation. So their meeting is on June 18th. So our board could, if the board is comfortable with this, we could still do an up to amount on the 23rd. But then the Board of Finance would have to have a special meeting. If we voted on this on our first meeting in July, which is July 8th, the Board of Finance meets on the 16th, we have to still schedule a town meeting, right? So we would probably do that the week of the 21st. So you're looking a month out for final approvals. And I don't think moving it up, we could maybe move it up a week or two. It's not going to you're not going to get a month. Right. So just laying that out there, but I'd like to just hear from the board, selectmen first about your comfort level. And then the question is, do we just do fund balance? Is that our recommendation? Do we want to tap the academy funding, which I'm kind of now, after looking at all the different things we're exploring with academy, we might want to keep that powder dry for now. I guess I open up for discussion.
Peggy, over the 50 years I've lived in Madison, there have been episodes of natural disasters. And at moments like that, Madison residents look to town government to be responsive and competent. And I feel this is a project that absolutely is part of our public safety program that the public expects us to keep current and be ready to respond. So I'm in favor of moving ahead with this.
I think about the positioning of that fire department and being downtown. Is it optimal to grow it? I don't know, but at the end of the day, you've got Hammonasset in town. You've got our responsiveness to I-95, which if you talk to Sam or the chief, we're out there all the time as first responders on I-95, and then obviously all our town residents as well. So I just think this is an opportunity to do what's right, to ensure that our equipment is protected, and then also we benefit from an EOC that has been way overdue in coming forward. So I'm definitely in support of this, and using the fund balance, not the bonds.
Yeah, and I look at it too from the public safety perspective, and more so with the response time even than the EOC itself. Just from the presentation we received and talking about, some expedited response times, I think that's really important for the public. But, Scott brings up a good point too about the services that we provide, to I-95 and Hammonasset that are outside of, just our town nucleus, so to speak. So I do have to ask, has there been any investigation through our state delegates on whether the state has, any funds that they could kick in to help move this project along because of the benefit that we do provide, to the larger community with our work on 95 and on Hammonasset. But, aside from that question, I do support, moving this project along. And I think we have plenty of opportunities to use those grant dollars for other CIP projects. So fund balance is where I would agree with as well.
Excuse my voice. It's a little scratchy today. So I think the need is there. It has been there for quite a while. The way this project originally came into discussion, it was a rather elegant on Sam's part to get the upgrades to the firehouse that it needed through the EOC money. But really, because we thought we were going to be going down that path, we didn't discuss, is that the right location to invest in? We didn't have that discussion publicly. And I know in the presentation we received, there was talk of this will be a 50-year improvement, that the building will service the needs of the town for the next 50 years. But I wonder if that was taking into account the 800 or so housing units, domiciles that the state wants us to put in. And if we assume for a moment that there will be a significant increase in housing in Madison because of the state's continued push, and logic dictates that most of that building will happen in the Madison Hose District, I think we want to circle back and know for sure that this addition will accommodate that growth. I would hate to be 5 or 6 years post-build and have the firehouse come back or the hose company come back in front of us, or Sam, and say, you know, guys, with all this building, we need more. This isn't going to do it. So my fingers crossed, my hope would be that Madison Hose is comfortable saying, yeah, we've got enough space now. We can accommodate that kind of growth. But I think it's a question to ask now, not later.
So I think the project as presented would accommodate that growth. If we had to go down to a 1-story, no, it wouldn't work. But keeping the apparatus bay, full apparatus bay on the first floor would definitely accommodate the extra growth that we would need to, for all this housing stuff. And I know they're even talking about doing 6-story single exit buildings on the capabilities of the fire department, which is probably not going to be
discussion. That's an equipment discussion, but this is a housing. I mean, we have to have a place to store that equipment to have that equipment ready to roll on the road.
Yes, and I believe that by adding that extra 2,500 or 2,800 square feet of the first floor apparatus space, you're going to have sufficient room.
Well, I think we will have some follow-up on what this bill actually means for Madison, and that is going to be a long conversation about what the actual requirements are going to be, what it looks like for us versus other towns. So we'll have that. So I know you're using the 800 number, which was kind of a high-level analysis that had been done by the group that put the fair share thing together. But I think that the reality is that, we're relying on volunteers, right? So, and this is a volunteer fire department that has a home in town with a very dedicated workforce, and I think that, to be able to provide them the support for what they need and the space they need is important to move forward. I think if we're going to have to add 800 more units in town, that's going to be a much bigger conversation, I think, about all our services, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, it could be 300, it could be 200, it could be 500. I don't know. But whatever that number is probably going to be impactful to all of our emergency services, not just our fire. And so while we're making this 50-year investment, we should be sure that it really will serve the needs of the town for the next 50 years. That's simply what I'm saying. So
yeah,
thanks, Sam, for that information. I appreciate that.
And realistically, even if it comes down to where we had to get a second ladder truck, there would be room to put it in that building.
Okay. With regards to the financing, I think it probably needs to come out of the excess fund balance.
Okay. Well, so then, maybe just let me ask, timing would the board prefer to approve this July 2nd, or do you want me to put it on the next meeting agenda just to so we can get the timeline going? And we would do an up to amount, I guess.
I'm with approving it now if you guys want to.
Well, I think the the Board of Finance wants a meeting without voting. We'll just say, you know, so
Hear the presentation.
right, to hear the
Yeah.
presentation.
Yeah, they should. That's awesome.
I mean, do you want us, we can approve it and then they can have a meeting and then they'll probably have to have a special meeting. The problem is we still then have to schedule a town meeting.
I mean, there's no harm in us proving it on the 23rd, is there? I mean, well, Ben's saying that timing could, but it's all predicated on the Board of Finances approving or
Right.
not approving anyway.
Right.
So it's almost doesn't matter, our decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Today.
hoping the Board of Finance was going to approve it on the 18th. That because if that was the case, then we'd be in really good shape. But if that's not going to happen on the 18th, then another week doesn't.
Well, why don't we do this? We could approve it, okay? And then if Board of Finance doesn't want to actually vote on it on the 18th, then I think, at least when I spoke to the chair, there would be openness to doing a special meeting after that. I think they're coming in cold to this I mean, I know they all been kind of paying attention, right? And know generally, but I think just as a process, this is a big appropriation. I think to have a meeting where they can absorb this, hear the full presentation, understand all the dynamics, all the choices for funding, and then vote at a separate meeting would probably be better protocol for them. If we're comfortable approving an appropriation amount now, it checks that off, and then we can set the town meeting date when on our June 23rd meeting. And then I'll have a better idea of when Board of Finance is going to approve it. Is that okay, or do people want to wait till the 23rd still for voting on it?
I'm fine now.
I'm fine now too.
I'd like to move ahead.
Okay. So then we would need to open up the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to open up the agenda and add item number 11A, approve an appropriation from the undesignated fund balance for the firehouse expansion EOC project for an amount up to $2.6 million. Is that the correct dollar amount, Ben?
Yeah, so the special appropriation would be $2,602,900.
Okay, amending with that motion. So now I'm just opening up the agenda. Can I get a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor of opening the agenda up, say aye.
Aye.
All right, great. Now I'd like to make a motion to approve item 11A of approving a special appropriation from the undesignated fund balance for the firehouse expansion EOC project for an amount up to what Ben read, 2.6 million 02, pending Board of Finance approval and town meeting approval.
So move. Second.
Okay. All right. Well, with no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. All right. Good. Sam, step one.
Step one.
So,
Thank you very much. Your support is greatly appreciated.
okay. And then I'll talk to the Board of Finance about their scheduling, but at least now, you know, they can do a special meeting if they want to or not. And then we'll talk about scheduling the town meeting, which will be in early July, probably. So if we can get this moving quickly.
Just want to throw it out there that our grant funders, sometimes this number matters to them, would be the total budget for the project. So you just approved the special appropriation, but a lot of times they want to see that the town has established a project budget. So with that special appropriation, your project budget would be 5,394,400, which is $2 million more that is in your current SIP that was approved at the 3,394. So I just don't know if it makes sense to get that on the record so we have that for our funding purposes.
Well, I could amend item number 11A. So I'd like to make a motion to amend. Oh, well, no, we already approved it now, right? So now do I have to do a whole nother? So I'd like to make a motion to add item 11B, which is to approve a total project budget for the firehouse expansion EOC project of can you read the number, please?
$5,394,400.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Do we need to add that to the agenda and then vote on it? So that was adding it to the agenda. So now I'd like to make a motion to actually approve item 11B. As I opened up the agenda for, all in favor, say aye, or no, second.
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 Okay, all right, now, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, great. So did you get that, Jeannie and Stacy? So we approved the project budget as 11B. Okay.
I did.
So now it's all on the record. All right, good. All right, thank you. Thank you, guys. I think this is good. This is just, I think it's great to move forward on this, and this is a great project. So, moving on to item number 12. Discuss and take action to accept a recommendation from the Facilities Department to award a contract to Gilbane Building Company with Electrical Contractors, Inc., as subcontractor in the amount of $1,325,907 for the advanced procurement of electrical equipment and materials for the Polson Middle School HVAC modernization, power upgrades, and auditorium renovations project, and to authorize the first select woman to sign all contracts and documents associated with this award budgeted in fiscal year 2024-2025 CNRE Emergency Shelter Generator Project.
So moved.
Okay, so this has been just basically, we already had approved the budget last time, it went through town meeting, and now this is the actual bid.
Yeah, so happy to say, start this one out. This one is actually under budget.
Oh, Ben.
Celebrate the small victories here. Anyway, so this is the advanced procurement package. It was approved by the building committee last week, and it is our generator and switch gear related to both the generator project and the overall Polson year one improvements at large. These are long lead time items. They take about a year to get here to be manufactured and delivered on site. So this is piece one of the project. And then Gilbane is going to be bidding out the rest of the project, all their trade packages later on this summer. So we had about 2 million in our project docs held aside for this initiative. We got 7 bids, really good marketplace participation. Gave credit to Gilbane in our building committee meeting that they put together a really, and BL companies as well, really tight bid package and garnered some really good interest. We had a good bid spread as well. So the low bidder was Electrical Contractors Incorporated. They were at 1.298. So again, we had about 2 million set aside for procurement of this advanced package. So we are in good shape so far. Gilbane has a CM fee of 2.15%. So the total purchase, so to speak, is 1.325907 to be exact. But the bid we're releasing is for them to have ECI get this order going. So that's it. Ready to go.
Okay, any further questions on that? Excited to see this moving forward. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, item number 13, discuss and take action to accept a recommendation from the Facilities Department to award a contract to Ferraro's Painting and Restoration in an amount not to exceed $57,924 for exterior painting of the police facility, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all contracts and documents associated with this award budgeted in fiscal year 25 planned and cycled maintenance budget.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further questions on this?
Nope.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. All right, moving on to item number 14. Discuss and take action to accept a donation of ESNS voting tabulators from the Secretary of State, pending Board of Finance approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions on this item?
Nope.
We've got one of our registrars here, so Greg, do you want to speak to this?
Sure. Yeah, we got a letter from SOTS that said that they are gifting out the 10 DS 3500 350s and the 1 DS 450 tabulators to the town of Madison, which currently we're being leased at for, I believe, $1.
Okay. These are the new things. Everything went pretty smoothly with the referendum, so that was good. They're a little slower, we know that, but
That's correct, yes.
operate great. Any further questions?
Nope.
No, okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, thanks. So we are accepting that. That goes on to the Board of Finance. Okay, item number 15. Discuss and take action to accept the revised Old Elm Street Local Historic District Report and enact an ordinance establishing the Old Elm Street Local Historic District.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, so with that, Aaron can speak to that, and Tom Boyle, who's chair of our Historic District Commission, right?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We had forwarded after the vote of residents within the proposed district, since there was an affirmative vote based off of the 2/3 of property owners. The report was forwarded to you, I believe, last month to either accept, reject, or send back to the committee for any recommended revisions. At that time, you did decide to send the report back to the study committee to review one particular property in which a resident had expressed an interest in revising the boundary. So that work has been done over the last week, or excuse me, month, and the report is sent back to you now with the hopes that you would accept the report and schedule for a public hearing to enact the Old Elm Street Historic District as proposed in the revised report, which would need an ordinance amendment to the Historic District Commission's section, which will add essentially the language of this district in addition to the Green District and the Liberty Street District. The only other item, technical questions I'll leave to Tom to answer if you have them specifically, but your next item is to schedule a possible public hearing date for the ordinance at your second meeting in July. And the committee is requesting that you postpone that hearing until your August meeting, which is the August 25th evening, just because of summer vacations, and Tom especially will not be able to attend that meeting to answer questions if folks have them during the public hearing.
So just so I understand though, that we're basically voting to accept the revisions that we had already sent to them from before, right? So everybody's comfortable voting to accept the revised report. Everybody's good with that?
Yep.
Okay, so any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. So that moves that forward. Now
I don't think anybody motioned it.
I read it, didn't I? That was
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
and
we
I
can-
seconded it.
Yeah. And then
Scott.
item number 16. I'm going to amend what's on the agenda with the new date. So I'm going to make a motion to discuss and take action to call a public hearing on Monday, August 25th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in Town Campus, Room A, for the following: to adopt an ordinance establishing the Old Elm Street Local Historic District.
All moved.
Second.
Okay, so any further comments on that? And then we just have the public hearing, which we always have with the new ordinance. And then that's just to hear comments or whatever. Then it passes, what, 30 days after, I think? It becomes effective. Forget the time frame. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. I know this has been a long road, Tom, so congratulations that you're getting it to this point. And it's nice to see this kind of pull together. So,
Thank you.
all right, I think that was pretty straightforward. So, all right, well, thank you, Aaron and Tom. And moving on, we'll take citizens' comments, and then we will be moving to an executive session. So the screen will go dark if you're attending. To talk about some contract negotiations. So any citizens hands raised for citizens comments?
Yes, go ahead, Fran.
Thank you. Regarding due diligence, some food for thought. One, is someone knowledgeable in the health and safety hazards of these turf materials reviewing the safety data sheets and asking the tough questions? And would these be available for public review? Second, do we need to establish more visible safety rules, or at least suggestions, regarding the use of artificial turf fields? And last, does the town need to review its potential liability exposure, given the growing negative health and safety data being released daily on these materials? Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other hands raised?
No, there are not.
No? Okay. So with that, just to remind the public, we're gonna be in executive session and no business will be conducted after we go out of executive session. I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session and invite in Jeannie Stevens, Stacy Nobitz, Gabe Gerard, our Labor Council, and Deb Ferrante. I think that's it, right? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great, so
Aye.
she will kind of close out, Jeannie will handle closing out the public part of the meeting, and we'll be in executive session in a few minutes. Meeting, so.
You're recording again.
Okay, and with that, thank you for everybody's time. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Aye.
All right, bye.